Who's the gentleman in the front row? I know. Good.
Greeting, everyone. Welcome to the May 9th, 2016 Town of Dudley Board of Selectmen Highway Commissioner Cemetery Commissioner meeting. First on the agenda is rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
First up, we have Board of Selectmen FAA minutes from 4/25/2016. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes for the Board of Selectmen, April 25th, 2016, as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, April 25th, 2016, the regularly scheduled portion of our agenda that night. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve the regular minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meeting of April 25th, 2016, as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
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 Unanimous. Next up, May 3rd, Dudley Municipal Complex Board of Selectmen FAA meeting. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes dated May 3rd, 2016, as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
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 Unanimous. We have no appointments and no resignations.
Ain't that good news?
Yes. Good news for resignations, bad news for appointments, because we do have some openings. Next up, public comments, citizens' comments. Generally, this portion is for informational purposes, for things that are not on our agenda. Anybody like to speak? Fire and EMS Chief Dean Kochanowski, please come forward.
Come on.
Along with Building Inspector Nelson Burlingame.
Okay, I just wanted to, and I know some of you are aware of it, I know the administrator's aware of it. We had an incident on Friday. We do annual inspections with the building department every year. So one of those buildings was Stevens Linen at 8 Mill Street, which we do every year. My fire captain and the building inspector went down there and found a multitude of violations that included no sprinkler inspection or test, no fire alarm test annually, no egress plan has been submitted, no emergency lights were operational, no extinguishers had been maintained, and there was no street address visible from the road. So we decided it was in the best interest to shut them down for the weekend. These types of things are annual inspections that are done every year. This isn't the first building manager's go around. This isn't his first rodeo. These are tagged things that are tagged every year, and they need to understand that the safety of the people is my number one priority. It's really my only job is life safety. Now, if there was a fire in there or somebody got hurt, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could. It's a mill-type structure. We all know how mills burn. The first questions that would have been asked is, were these inspections performed? Did they pass? And did they do anything to remedy it? Which I think we did the right thing by closing them down. I mean, like I said, they should have known better. And then one of the selectmen got an email over the weekend from the Historical Society, which I don't understand why they're even getting involved. It has nothing to do with the historical significance of the building. It's only about the operation that is working out of that building. I'm getting these emails filled with expletives that are saying that we walked in out of the blue and we're trying to stick it to Stevens Mill, and on and on and on. And then I get an email from the owner stating that, same thing, it's not fair, it was last minute, pulling the wool over our eyes, that type of thing, which is totally not true. I called the building office. They were given a letter 30 days ahead of time that this inspection was going to take place, and they were also given a follow-up call 24 hours prior to us being there to make sure that somebody was there to walk us through the building. Just 3 months ago, and Nelson can back me up on this, we shut down another operation right down the street on Schofield for similar violations, and that person was fined $3,000 by me. So, I mean, there was a lot more I could have done to the mill. Closing them down for one weekend was mild. So, and I've worked, and this isn't the first problems we've had with that place. We've had people living in there that weren't supposed to be living in there. We've had, they had a cooking operation going on in there until we caught them with no hood system, which we just made them take it out, and they worked with us and they took it out. But I could have pursued it further, and I didn't. And their fire alarm panel was in fault in the basement well before I was chief here, and after I became chief here, it took them 3 years to get it fixed and upgraded the way it was supposed to be. So, and the other thing, and Nelson can correct me if I'm wrong, because he was there Friday, there was smell of paints and gasoline in there. I've had complaints, and I hope this person is watching this broadcast right now, because I've had anonymous complaints that they're working on cars there, but I can never catch them doing it. So, I mean, there's a lot of hazards there. I mean, I want to work with the businesses in town. I understand people need to make money, but at the end of the day, like I said, life safety is the most important thing, and it's the law.
Nelson,
Yes.
anything you'd like to add?
I'm here just to back the chief up. What he's saying is true. And the big thing is we did send a letter on 4/15/16 that told them we were going to have the inspection. Basically, they know the three biggies, you know, the sprinklers, the alarms, and the fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers were out of date. The sprinklers were out of date. They were just out of date, but they were still out of date, which we probably would have been okay with that maybe. But then when we came to the emergency lightings, none of them worked. All the batteries were old, and you know they didn't work. And that really was the bottom line. That is the reason why, because we discussed about the closing. We didn't take it lightly. We gave it a lot of thought because we don't want to put anybody out of business or not be business friendly. And we had a lengthy discussion, and we all agreed that it should be closed down, and they need to go forward and learn from it, I hope.
Mr. Belkunis, you agree with the action as laid out? Board members? Mr. Flowers?
As far as I'm concerned, the fire department and the building inspector did their job. That's what they were supposed to do. They did their inspections, they found some major violation issues, and they had to address those issues for the safety of the public and the people that work there. As far as I'm concerned, you did your job correctly, and you have my support.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Joseph?
Who did we send the letter of notification there was going to be an inspection? Who do we send that to?
I believe it was sent to the building owner.
To Peterson?
Ken sent it, but yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But we also called, I don't know his last name, and
Mike
I don't mean to.
Kaplan.
Yeah, I
Mike.
call him Bicycle Mike.
Yep.
He also got a phone call that we were coming,
Okay.
so, you know. But I think what happened, I think communications between the building owner and Mike, I don't think their communications is as good as it should be, maybe, and I think that was part of the problem, too.
Yep. I talked to the chief very briefly in the elevator coming up, and it was brief. And I told him I received a call from Mike right after the inspection was done, and also that he called me today asking if this item was going to be on the agenda, and I wasn't sure at that point to what extent or how it was going to be done until I talked with the chief. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right, both of you. It was the right thing to do, no question about that, and we all support local businesses. However, there is an issue of communication between the owner and the man who manages, Mike, George Peterson, the owner, and Mike, who basically runs the flea market, which is, right now, their source of income, you know, to pay bills for the building. And Mike told me that he didn't behave well when he got the news. And I said, okay, all right, then you need to talk with the chief and Nelson if you didn't. He also indicated that they brought in the fire alarm system, the company that does that, and they are coming back. That'll be done by Thursday. He also indicated that they replaced all 13 batteries on the emergency lighting. They were dead, and that hadn't been checked. And I didn't go to the point of asking Mike who was responsible for that, him or the building owner. And I'm not asking that question now. He also indicated that they replaced several fire extinguishers that were still fully charged, but their inspection date had expired also. And he said that he hoped that they would get everything done. He's also bringing in Ray Shaw, and you might know who Ray Shaw is. I don't, and that's some
They're
company.
a sprinkler contractor.
Okay? So that's all going to be done by Thursday night, and I know he's going to be in contact with you, Chief. And, I mean, you know, they know what they did wrong. I don't. I know, based on what I've heard over and over, that there is an issue between communication between the owner and the fellow who runs the flea market. I guess one of my questions is, what were the grounds that you received an email from a member of the Historic Commission?
Well, a member of the Board of Selectmen received it and forwarded it to me because they were complaining that the mill got shut down and it wasn't right and it was a last-minute thing, and I just walked in out of the blue, and you know, I have it out for the mill, which is totally untrue. It's way off base. I treat every business the same. I just gave you a perfect example. 3 weeks ago, we shut another establishment down. I'm obeying the law. My number one priority is life safety. And
As is
especially with mill-type buildings, especially with the fire load that you have in that building, it's extreme. And, you know, people can say, oh, big deal, the exit light, the emergency lights don't work and it's during the day. Well, you know, you go 50, 100 feet into a mill, it's like it's nighttime.
Let me ask this, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I just want to pursue this a little bit. When was the email from the member of the Historical Commission sent?
May 6th at 9:35 at night.
Friday?
May 6th, yes.
Friday.
John Monson.
So how would a member of the Historical Commission know about it when I didn't even know the details at that point?
I don't know. He must have talked with the owner or the building manager.
Somebody fed him
I'm
the
assuming. I have no idea. You would have to ask him.
Okay,
But
I wanted to ask that question to get that out, because I don't know how it happened.
I mean, the owner also responded to my email, because I did email the member of the Historical Society back and said I explained what I just explained to all of you. And he said, pretty much said the same thing. You know, to do this on a Friday afternoon without warning in the springtime is very unfair, but he had ample warning.
This is the owner?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the 30-day, the letter 30 days ahead of time, the phone call 24 hours ahead of time. And I don't know, we were just doing our job. And you know, if he was that concerned about it, he should be talking to the building manager and saying, why weren't you making sure that this stuff was done that should be done every year, instead of trying to make us look bad when we're just doing our job.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to cast blame anywhere, because I don't know where the blame belongs. But, you know, one of the things we've talked about when it comes to the attorney for the Islamic cemetery is we've always asked to engender trust and to be reasonable. Now, every time, and appropriately, that the Historical Commission has come before us for letters supporting the incremental tax credits, we've gladly done that. And I think that it's appropriate that the owner also reciprocate that reasonableness. So I'm perfectly comfortable with you guys handling it. Perfectly comfortable from here on.
You know, I just want to state, too, I think the chief and the building inspector did absolutely what was required. Absolutely 100% agree with Mr. Fox, Mr. Joseph. I'm sure Jonathan has something to add. And I just would like, through the administrator, it's great that the building owner communicated to Paul all this information about tentative schedules. Someone should notify the owner and/or the manager that the proper way to do it would be to contact the fire chief or the building inspector for redirection, or go through our office officially. Because I don't want to get caught, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't want to be the one where someone says, I'm going to fix that tomorrow. And I tell these guys, go back there tomorrow, and it's not done.
Let me just clarify,
Oh, no,
Steve.
wait one second.
It wasn't the owner that called me, it was the guy that runs the flea market,
That's
the
why I said,
manager.
either the owner or the manager, whoever it was, needs to understand there's a better way to handle it.
Exactly.
And I also would like, with the board's pleasure, anybody can communicate with the board, absolutely understand that, but I don't take kindly to even an appearance of somebody interfering, an appointed position that has no bearing on what was going on,
Yep.
whether it's interfering or stating an opinion or misstating an opinion, because obviously it wasn't true. I think that board member and probably all boards need to understand the same thing. The proper way to do it is to go through the channels. If you're not comfortable contacting the chief, it's the administrator. We try to stay away from individuals. So I just think it's a lesson learned. Get your things done for your inspection, but the communication has to be streamlined, and people need to be pointed in the right direction. It's not, I mean, Mr. Fox got a phone call, I believe also fairly late at night concerning the issue. That's not the way,
Really?
10 o'clock.
it's not the way things should be handled. It's not the way things should be taken care of. Mr. Ruda,
I apologize for walking in a few minutes late.
didn't even notice.
I know. Why are we having this conversation? I'm just out of curiosity.
I just wanted to make the board aware of what was happening, because I was actually blindsided by it, 9:30 on, or whatever time it was, 9:35 on Friday night. I was just shocked that everybody was so surprised that it was so bad that, we shut it down.
Okay.
I don't understand what people don't understand about life safety.
I just don't want you to feel like you need to justify your actions,
I
because
don't-
your actions were 100% correct. And a failure of communication between the owner of a building and the person that manages the building, or whatever the case may be, is certainly not your issue. If you,
Well, the other
I mean,
thing,
for you
sorry.
to have to justify your actions is, I don't want you to feel that way. I mean, if there's a life safety issue, enforce it.
Oh, I don't. I'm trying to want to keep everybody in the fold here, and because it's a major thing. It's not a minor issue, but we inspected other buildings that day. We do the college. We do all the other businesses in town. It's an annual thing. I just don't like the fact that somebody's trying to tell me we sneak attacked them. Just follow the law. How hard is it to follow the law? Get your tags updated.
I'm sure if there was an
I mean,
issue,
it's ridiculous.
I'm sure there was an issue if the guy needed a couple days and called one of you folks and said, gee, can you push it off till Thursday? I got to fix a couple things. It probably wouldn't have been that big an issue, right?
Right. If there was a couple of things wrong, I would have said just fix it next week and you can stay open. But there was like 6 major things.
Right.
The sprinklers being the most major thing.
Yeah, we don't want another North Village.
Yeah.
Mr. Fox?
Okay, Peter.
We don't need to talk about this much longer.
Yeah.
You did your job.
Right.
You did exactly what you should have done. Had you not done that the way you did it, I would have been disappointed. But I'm glad the fire department and the building inspector did exactly what was required of them, period. Good job.
Well,
Mr. Joseph? Oops, sorry.
I'm not looking for credit for doing my job. It's just doing my job. But I guess the point of the whole thing is this is my first go-around with the Historical Society. I have nothing against the Historical Society. What they do, I think, is very important, preserving, historical things, even though they probably don't think I think that way, but I do. But I'm sorry. Common sense will tell you that life safety has to come first in every single instance. Perfect example, house on Center Road. It's a hazard. It could fall on somebody. It's coming down. I'm sorry. That's the way it has to be.
Now, he said he's sorry, which is, he did that in the classical Greek sense of the word apologia, which means to explain. He's really not sorry.
No, I'm really not.
The other thing I want to mention is, you should know that this board does what it's supposed to do. And I'm sure the other selectmen who may have received notification by one person or another did the same thing I did this afternoon when I talked with the flea market manager. And I told him that if he's got the stuff done and he's got a problem, he's got to pick up the phone and call you. So I'm sure everybody else handles it the same way.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the board for your support. I never had a doubt about the board. I think the reason the chief wanted to be here was he just wanted to explain it because of the things that were going around, and he wanted to make it clear of what we did and why we did it, that's all. But there was never a question about you guys' support, really. I think Dudley has a great Board of Selectmen.
Right, if I didn't say anything, you guys would have been texting me and calling me. Why didn't you tell me what happened at the mill this weekend, you know? So I'm just trying to, it's not like it was like a house inspection. This was kind of a major thing, so.
Can we just clarify, is this your departmental report?
Any other citizens wishing to speak that is not on the agenda for informational purposes? Mr. Raymond.
Yes, Richard Raymond, 191 Cloven Road. A bit of a concern. There was an article in this weekend's Telegram Gazette dealing with the cemetery issue, okay, in which a member of the Board of Selectmen took it upon himself to hold negotiations with the group. Is that correct?
No.
Well, then the quotation marks in the news article as printed, I guess, are incorrect, and somebody ought to contact the T&G for a retraction, because it's been quoted to reach an agreement, and an agreement wasn't reached. So if you're trying to reach an agreement, no agreement was reached, there certainly was an intent to reach an agreement. So the confusion comes is last week, the board-sponsored Article 20, all right, which we wholeheartedly endorse, and we believe the board endorsed as well. All right, the article certainly indicates that it runs contrary to Article 20, because Article 20 is for the possible acquisition, okay, of all 55 acres, not carving something out to downsize a 16,000 site proposed cemetery in a town with less than 12,000 people in it. I mean, so that became a concern, and I just want to know, when is an elected official not an elected official? I understand everybody has their private citizens' rights, okay? But in exercising their private citizens' right, they shouldn't be quoted as an elected official.
I'm going to defer to the town administrator first, before I'm sure Mr. Joseph would like to respond. Is there an answer to that question? An easy answer? When is an elected official?
An elected official is always an elected official. However, he has no official standing when he acts individually and outside of this board meetings. Board members themselves have no power other than when there's a quorum of board that's present. Cannot commit the town to any particular actions, cannot make any deals on behalf of the town and the Board of Selectmen.
Unless empowered by the Board of Selectmen.
Correct, and that has to be done via public vote.
Correct.
So, I'm not putting anybody on the, I guess my question would be, Mr. Raymond asked, was it a misquote in the paper or misidentification?
I don't want to get into who says what in the paper.
I
don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to respond to an article that's in the paper.
I'd love to answer that, and I'm glad you brought it up. Can I do that?
Yep.
I was going to do under the selectmen's comments, but with your permission, I'd like to do it now. All right? On the selectmen that you referred to, absolutely correct. And I will tell you what I told the media, the radio, and the newspapers that talked to me. No negotiations were held. None. I'm going to tell you the whole story exactly as I told the media. And I talked with Deb LaPlaca, who did the article, and I know she was limited in space and can only say some of the things that I told her. I told her a lot more than that. Here's what I told the gentleman from the Globe last Thursday afternoon, because the article in the Globe was in Friday. And what I told Deb LaPlaca and the gentleman from WBUR NPR Radio in Boston, Dave, and I can never remember his last name, after the very short ZBA meeting. I'm going to tell you exactly what I told them. After the first, one more thing. In Deb's article, I did not tell her who the citizen was. And the reason I didn't was, I didn't ask that citizen for permission to say who held the private meeting. But I have since gotten his permission, and I will tell you now that most of us know him, Lou Perrin, who spoke at that very first ZBA meeting. Lou is a former reserve officer in the police department. He's a veteran. He's a former Marine recruiter, and he now owns a paving company. and he lives here in Dudley. What happened was, after the very first ZBA meeting, Lou was very upset at the animosity and the walls that was set up by the approach of the Islamic Society's lawyer, Mr. Talaman. He was very, very concerned about that. At that meeting, he had a conversation with the gentleman who first represented the society at the table, and he was the president of the Islamic Society. And they exchanged telephone numbers. And they agreed, Lou invited him to his house to meet without attorneys, to just have a conversation without attorneys there. All right? That's all that they wanted to do. Well, that gentleman he came to the first few meetings, but he didn't come to a bunch of meetings. He has been replaced by Mr. Benazzi at the last meetings, the gentleman who made the impassioned plea about his son on April 7th, and they have maintained contact. Lou asked me, said, Mr. Joseph, I'd like you to come to that meeting as my guest, and I'd be more comfortable if you were there. So before, I told him I had to bounce it off some people. I talked with Gary Brackett, Town Council. I talked with Greg Balyakonis, our Town Administrator. I talked with Mr. Sullivan, Chair of the Board, and I said, here's what I've been invited to. I'm willing to go as a citizen, not as a selectman, and I'll make that clear. And they said, fine, and we all agreed, and I had already certainly made that decision, that I would make it clear that I was there as a citizen. We met at Lou's house 2 weeks ago, I think tomorrow. I went there at the very beginning, and it was nice. It was social. It was Lou, myself as his guest. It was Mr. Benazzi, who is the chair of the board of directors, to whom the president of the society reports to, and Hamid, their engineer, who has been at every meeting. Mr. Talaman, I want to emphasize, was not there. I made it clear, emphatically at the beginning. I said, I am here as a citizen. I'm not here as a selectman. I'm not speaking for the Board of Selectmen. I'm not speaking for the town or the people or any other committee of the town. They acknowledge that, and they'll acknowledge it today. You can ask them at any time. They absolutely acknowledge that and said, we understand that. So during that meeting, they asked me, and I don't remember if they said resident or citizen, they said, what are your expectations? And I said to them, my expectations are that you will do what you said you would do towards the end of the April 7th meeting, when I asked you on camera if you are willing to ask for only what you need and nothing more. And that's not 55 acres. And they said yes. And at that meeting, Mr. Benazzi, sitting where you are, said into the microphone very clearly, yes, we will ask only for what we need. That's all occurred on April 7th. And he said, what are your expectations? And I said, personally, my expectations are you won't ask for any more than what you need. I don't know why you asked for 16,000, I don't know, 16,000, and then scaled that down to 12,400, all right? And he said, well, what if we were to buy all the land, use only what we need based on the figures that we had talked about on the 7th, and we lease the rest of the land to farmers? And I told him, and I hope you'll ask them this, I told him, that is not acceptable to me personally. And he said, why? I said, unfortunately, I've said it publicly and I'll say it again, the members of the Islamic Society that I have spoken to are nice people. They're decent people, they're professional people, they're reasonable people. And I told him, unfortunately, in my mind and the minds of anyone else I've talked to, there's no difference between your attorney and you. You are one. You are guilty by association. The people of Dudley don't trust you making that proposal and buying all the land. They just don't, and I'm not sure I do either. All right? So with that, they said, okay, fine. Now what's interesting is, on Thursday afternoon, I was working a job in Charlton. I get a call from Brian McQuarrie, who is the reporter for the Boston Globe that did the first article when Mr. Talman made all of those accusations about the townspeople. And he said to me, and I don't remember verbatim, but I remember what we talked about. He said, tell me what you make of this article, 13 or 20, the article about us buying, us having the right to buy the land under 61A.
20.
Article 20. He said, what do you make of that? And he was under the assumption it meant, because he told me this, that we were going to buy the land. I said, no, that's not what the article says. The article says it's asking the people, the townspeople, at a town meeting to authorize the Board of Selectmen to do what they have the right to do and what they have the authority to do, and that is to study it, make a decision, and if that means buying it, then buying it. But there's not money going to be spent. This is not to buy the land. This is to authorize this Board of Selectmen to look at it. And he said, well, does that mean you'll buy it? And if you look at his article on that Friday, this past Friday, you'll see it says, he quotes me correctly, as Deb did, all right? Honest to gosh. He said, does that mean you're going to buy the land? I said, honest to gosh, I don't know. Of course I don't know, all right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. The board hasn't even discussed it yet. That was done. And then he needed to know the difference between a debt exclusion and a Prop 2.5 override. And I explained that simply. Debt exclusion for the life of the debt indebtedness. Prop 2.5 override is forever. He said, well, he originally referred to it as a Prop 2.5. I said, no, it's a debt exclusion. Okay, so we understood that, got that squared away. But then he said something very telling. He had spoken to Attorney Talman earlier in the day, and he said that Talman disagreed that we had, and he put it in the article, but not as quotes, that Talman disagreed that we had a right to first refusal. And my response to him was, hopefully he still got it on tape, I said, look, I'm old enough and smart enough to know that I know what I don't know, and I don't know the legalities. So I'm going to leave that to our town council and Mr. Talman to work it out. That was the end of that. But he said, Mr. Talman said on Thursday morning that the town was involved in, not negotiations, he said conversations. All right? And I told Dad that it was, that had happened. And that it was between the town and his clients. So I interrupted Brian and I said, once again, and I'm glad I didn't use the language I was thinking. I said, once again, Mr. Talman has adequately demonstrated that he is perfectly capable of screwing up a free lunch. He wasn't even there. There were no negotiations between the town. I never represented that. I have no problem talking with them as an individual. They knew it, I knew it, and there were no negotiations, plain and simple. So then Deborah Parker asked me about that. The guy from WBUR asked me about that, and I answered them all the same way. And here's the neat part. I haven't told a different story to anybody because I haven't had to. You tell the truth once, you stay with the truth, you don't have to remember who you lied to. That's what happened.
Well, thank you for that explanation. However, the bell has been rung with the Telegram and Gazette, which implies something totally different, okay, in how you read it, and it's in print, and the fact does remain that you were interviewed and you were quoted. Now, whether you were misquoted or not, that's to be seen. People have private meetings all the time, and private meetings are just that, they're private meetings, and that's the way they should stay. Earlier tonight, Mr. Sullivan made mention that there's a chain of command and a proper process into how things should be handled, and I think that's all we're asking for, rather than just have, you know, I guess a private meeting becoming public and a member of the Board of Selectmen, okay, is being quoted, okay,
and all of a sudden a private meeting is no longer private and implies something totally different. So therefore, as a resident of Dudley, I was not very happy, as others. I received phone calls, as others have, and email chain started burning up. All right, so just to let you know, if you were misquoted, I would certainly hope that, it would get corrected. All right, this is an issue. This is an issue far beyond, any implication of a cemetery. You know where the property is. You know the infrastructure there. That the implication of the infrastructure of that road on public safety alone could cost this town millions. All right, to update, let alone acquisition of land.
You mean based on both their on both their requests?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You would have a any type of medium to large funeral procession, all right? That road closes down, school buses can't pass, vehicles can't pass. Somebody holds a flea market right now on that road right now, it's a stop-and-go situation.
Bedlam.
It's a very small, narrow road, and I believe, I was told, I have no first-hand knowledge, but I was told the highway department was already out there measuring and looking and what would have to be done. And to update that infrastructure just for public safety for what they want to do would cost this town a lot of money. Far more than any acquisition you can get for the land and do something else with. Well, I just wanted the confusion. The article was read, the article was written, the article was read.
Yep.
All right? If you were misquoted, you were misquoted. I know that happens, okay? But as an elected official, okay, I certainly hope it is a united front in what you're going to do. The people will decide, I guess, at the 23rd in what direction they want to go.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good thing.
I want you to know, by the way, that right after that Tuesday night meeting, the next day, Wednesday, I called Greg and filled him in, and what I told him at that time is no different from what I just said to you. And I called Attorney Brackett and told him what happened, and it was no different. The only misquote that you might be referring to that I could think of, and I know Deb certainly could answer it, is, as I said, due to space, she couldn't say everything, she couldn't possibly print everything that I said to her. And I repeated exactly what I did to you just now. I told them that as a citizen, that was not acceptable to me. I could not support that because I didn't trust them, and neither did the people of Dudley. All right? And that's accurate, and that's what I said.
Mr. Sullivan, thank you.
I just want to clarify, too, Mr. Joseph did talk to me. I haven't spoken to him since, before we met with him. And I'm not one to give out sage advice, but I believe I said, be careful.
Yep.
And the flip side, after our last meeting, NPR wanted to quote me on the radio, and I wouldn't give in to the guy, directed him towards the town administrator, because I felt chain of command, streamline our voice, and we actually had a fairly productive, I listened more than anything. They had Greg and the other guy, I can't remember his name either, had a productive conversation where NPR had put out an awful news article after that first meeting, and I think the gentleman was enlightened maybe a little bit more as to how,
Dave?
yeah,
Is that the Dave guy?
Yeah.
how municipal processes work. So, but I also want to state publicly for the record, I'm in no mood, no inclination, no desire to conduct any negotiation with any private entity on any project in town that is going through a legislative process or a rules process until that is completed and we come to a decision. Doesn't matter if it's this issue, if somebody else, if somebody want to put a super Walmart in town, I'm in no mood until any kind of legislative process plays itself out.
Well, thank you very much.
Before you go, I knew I could have said no. I knew I could have said no, all right? But Lou asked me because he wanted someone there that he could trust, and he felt comfortable with me. And I want you to know this, too, that I asked the advice of Greg and town council. I said, should I go? And they said, as long as you make it clear that you're acting as an individual, you're fine.
Through the chair, if I may. I don't think anybody's questioning the meeting in what you did at the meeting. The mere fact that the meeting became public in print and misquote, and the information that got out, whether it was accurate or inaccurate, okay, it portrays something different, all right, than just a private meeting.
And you know
at
why?
somebody's houses.
That's because Attorney Talman told the Boston Globe that there were negotiations between the town and his clients, which is absolutely false. And then the other media picked up on that. And that's when I don't know if you did or not, I can't speak for you. That's what happened. Once again, Talman does what Talman does.
Through the chair, Mr. Joseph, you were interviewed, Mr. Talman wasn't.
I'm sorry.
You were interviewed by the press, Mr. Talman wasn't. You sat there Thursday night, and you were interviewed for quite some time at the zoning board meeting that didn't take place. And that's when the article came out, was after that.
That's
Not
because
Mr. Talman.
he was interviewed by all those people Thursday night before they talked to me. That's why they asked me, do you have the right to first refusal? And that's when I said, you know what? That's up to the town. I believe we do based on the advice of town council.
Okay. Well,
I fought. I'm not on a defensive. I'm comfortable with what I did. I was real careful what I said, real careful what I did, and I'm not going to let him or anybody else try to besmirch the way this town has handled this whole process.
I think this town has handled it correctly. Okay, I think the media has been one-sided in this right along, whether it been from Boston, Worcester, and even the Cape Cod Times, for God's sakes, is picking up stuff, But they're recycling old news articles from February is what they're doing. I guess they can't get the news too quick out there, But I think it's horrible. It's been all one-sided. This is nothing more than the location. Whether the location's acceptable. It's not that there shouldn't be a cemetery. That's not the issue at all. It's just where should the cemetery be? It's 2.5 miles from Dudley Oxford Road on a road that barely lets 2 cars pass. It's 1.5 miles from Route 31, which on roads that barely let 2 cars pass. Can you see a major funeral procession?
That's a great point.
I understand, the way rituals are in the Islamic society is they may, I'm not sure 100%, the burial process is like 24 or 48 hours after death. So you have no control over timing or setting stuff up. And so therefore you have to rely on the infrastructure that's in place, and the infrastructure in place certainly cannot handle anything major.
Do you remember on April 7th, I asked 2 things from that table over there. I said the 2 issues are trust and reasonableness. And I said, on the trust issue, you're asking for, at that time, 16,000, yet you only do 9 to 15 burials a year. I said, are you planning, is this going to be a regional cemetery? That was the first question. The second question was, why are you asking for such a large amount of land when you don't need that much? And that becomes the issue of reasonableness. Why aren't you being reasonable? Well, their attorney answered that second question right away. And he never answered the first question. Never did. So I've been on the up and up. The board's been on the up and up. The ZBA, the Board of Health, everybody's been on the up and up. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. And it has not been equal. And that's how I feel about it.
I'm going to recognize the Telegram Gazette.
Can she come up to the
Yeah,
mic?
you have to come up, Doug, because they can't hear you.
I would just like to say that, one, it was not a misquote, and I'm sure PJ will confirm that.
What was that, Deb?
It was not a misquote. The quote in the telegram was not a misquote. It was exactly as said. The interview was just over 8 minutes. I have it recorded.
Good.
And clearly you all know I have limited space, so I chose what would tell the story, what would make the reader understand what the story was. PJ, Paul Joseph, the way he just described his interviews, absolutely correct. That's exactly what he told me. What I think might be kind of the misunderstanding here is that one quote that says an agreement was not reached wasn't about how did negotiations go. The intent in that quote was to further his argument that he was there as a private citizen and he was not negotiating on behalf of the town. And furthering his argument, he said, so an agreement was not reached because I was there as an individual, not as a selectman. No misquotes. It's being misread.
Yeah, there was no intent. There shouldn't have been an agreement because an agreement was not the intent of that meeting. Not at all.
And like I said, it was just over 8 minutes, the interview, and I have to be very selective of what comments I choose from an interview, and I choose the one that tells the story best, in my mind. And it happens all the time. We all have our own lenses, and people read the content differently than how I intended it, but that was the intention.
You know, I don't have a copy of the article in front of me, and Paul certainly can defend himself. But I think, listening to Mr. Raymond and people that had contacted me, I think there was another quote in there, too, that Paul can speak for. It said something about I, meaning him, Paul, would accept nothing less than the minimum. Or something, I don't have the article, you do. And I think that was part of the
Personally,
confusion.
he would accept nothing but the minimum, and he did use the word personally a number of times.
Yep.
And he did make it very clear before we even began the interview. I found out about the meeting through Mr. Tallerman. I interviewed him just moments before I interviewed Mr. Joseph. Mr. Tallerman had said, and earlier that week, another member of the Islamic Society was interviewed by a different Telegram and Gazette reporter, and he told that reporter, we have met with some residents. That was the quote. So one of the very first questions I asked Mr. Tallerman is, so who were those residents exactly? Can you tell me? And he wasn't a participant in the meeting, and the only thing he knew who attended from Islamic Society, and he knew Mr. Joseph was there, but he did not know what home and how the meeting all came about. So once I was finished interviewing Mr. Talman, I walked over. Mr. Joseph was just finishing his interview with another reporter, and I asked the question. And the way he just described it moments ago is exactly the way he described it to me. Unfortunately, I don't have limitless space, and I had to be selective of which quotes I used.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, Mr. Joseph. You know, whether or not you were misquoted or not, I guess I misread it, you know, so I guess I'll stop getting the Telegram and Gazette because I can't read between the lines of what they print. So,
You know, ask my wife. After I read Deb LaPlaca's article, and I hadn't talked to her about, did you put more in, until after that I saw the article. Ask my wife. My reaction was, oh, geez, this is going to cause some problems, because there was so much more that explained. Of course there was no agreement. That was not the intent. It was not a negotiation. It was not. All right? What's acceptable? To me personally, exactly what I asked you on April 7th. Will you simply ask for what you need and nothing more? Then the town can deal with the request for what you need. Not that we're not going to buy the land. And I don't have an opinion on that. And I'm saying that publicly. All right? If we buy that land, we buy that land. But we're not buying the land to prevent a 16,000 in-ground burial cemetery or a 12,400 in-ground cemetery. We're rejecting it because we don't want that cemetery in that location, because it's now down to what they need and nothing more. And we have that right. We have that right. And that's the point that I wanted to make. I don't apologize. I think it was the right thing to do. It was in the best interest of the town, and I was tired of dealing with scaled-down requests that were token.
well, as through the chair, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to speak, but hopefully in the future, private meetings by private citizens remain private. Thank you.
Thank you,
That
sir.
would be okay.
Any other citizen comments on an issue not on the agenda? Seeing none. Public hearings, having none. License and permitting, at this time I will step out because there's a request before the board for a one-day wine and malt license. Mr. Fox, the table is yours. I'll be back in an hour.
Okay, item number 6, licensing and permits. Nichols College, one-day wine and malt license for Saturday, July 16th, 2016, from 6:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the Daniels Auditorium for Bison Blitz celebration. Any comments or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we approve a request from Nichols for one-day malt and wine on July 16th, 2016, from 6:30 to 11 in the Daniels Auditorium, as requested.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before she leaves, come on up. This is not alcohol-related, Steve.
Thank you.
Before Lynn leaves, I want to make it known that due to the efforts of Lynn and Dr. Engelmeyer, the president, they responded to the issue of that fellowship meal at St. Andrews having to close down in June and July, and Webster does not do meals during June and July. And they asked, they sent Dave Hebert, who's the general manager of the food service at Nichols, down to meet with the people from St. Andrews, and he attended the meal that I helped at last Wednesday. And I got to tell you this, as a result of his volunteering, the fellowship meals in Dudley will go on as long as there are enough people that need those meals during June and July in Dudley. And that'll be the only place they have to go because Webster shuts it down for the summer. And I got to tell you this on a personal note, I don't know if I've ever met a nicer man, a genuinely nicer man than Dave Hebert. I mean, he couldn't do enough. So I just want to say that, and I want to say thank you to you and to the president.
Welcome.
Chief Lynn.
Thank you.
Number 7, public business. Joanne Chanel, Relay for Life. Permission to place purple ribbons and signs in Dudley for the month of May. Tabled from 4/25/2/16. Nice shirt.
You want to get relayed?
Nice shirt. I just meant the color.
Purple.
Yes.
Well, black with purple. Purple. So, you guys all know me. So I come down here for my toll road. So Dudley, as you know, is part of the Relay for Life of the Greater Southbridge area. And what we're doing is going around to the different communities this year, and we're painting the town purple. What we mean is we're taking these beautiful purple ribbons that say Relay for Life on them and tie them to posts or trees wherever we're designated that we can do it. And we're putting up signs with the date of the relay coming up in June. This is an initiative that is really national. It's across the United States to get recognition for the relays, and it's the first time that we're actually trying to get it off the ground in our community. So right now, I spoke at Charlton, so we'll be doing it in Charlton starting on this coming Sunday, May 15th, through May 22nd. A group of people will put up the ribbons and the signs, and then we'll come and remove them the following Sunday. So they'll only be up a week. It's just like a little blitz.
So what are you actually looking for? Because we don't have a ribbon policy.
We do not.
You don't.
Certainly don't want to create one either.
No, you don't. And last year, when I asked about it, because we were thinking about doing it last year, you mentioned that would be fine as long as we didn't go near the park that was, do you have a Veterans Park or something?
Any Veterans Memorial.
Yes.
On all
So
the
as long
squares.
as we didn't go near those,
Right.
putting up the ribbons, and as long as we cleaned up our mess.
Mr. Chairman, I'm completely in favor of it. My only question is, if after a certain length of time, if you could tell us, and there's still ribbons left, would you take them down after a certain point?
Yeah, we'll be taking them down a week later. They'll only be up for a week.
Okay, I think it's a great idea, and I'm in support of it, definitely.
Thank you.
Fire and EMS. You have a comment? Oh, okay. So Greg, Mr. Balakunis, what would your suggestion be? Limited to, for example, town-owned street signs only? Because we don't own the telephone poles either.
Yeah, I would say street signs and other public property. Not on poles, not in any way to interfere with travel.
But nothing on veteran, obviously nothing on veteran squares.
Yeah, and they're pretty clear in terms of where those are. And of course, private property.
Right, private property's always good.
Help yourself.
I guess that's where we'll put the yard signs.
Sure.
And the yard signs will only state when the relay is and where it is.
Anybody else for Joanne?
I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Joanne, just understand if there is an issue with it, we'll probably either have somebody remove it and they'll contact you. If one-
Absolutely, I'll be the contact.
and Michelle will be.
We're good friends.
Right.
Email buddies.
Well, we wish you well. We wish you well and good luck.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'm
And-
going to move that we grant permission, so it's a matter of record, for the Relay of Life to place purple ribbons and signs in Dudley during the month of May, and that they will be removed not more than, any remaining ones that are up will be removed not more than 1 week after the event.
Second.
Motion made in multiple seconds. Any further discussions or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite you all to the relay on June 17th, 6 p.m.
Not bad. Next up, Tracy I, Janet's Crusade Run Walk 5K Road Race. I don't think anybody in town donates more time than Tracy I and spends more time waiting at the meetings to be heard.
Good evening.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, let me introduce, you probably know, this is Julie Winans and Julie St. Francis. And the three of us, along with a number of other citizens of Dudley, learned sadly that a real all-star citizen of Dudley named Janet Brooks has recently been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She has 2 boys, middle school age boys, and Janet is just an absolute wonderful person who devotes all of her time and energy to the youth of Dudley. She has done a tremendous amount of work through Dudley Youth Soccer, and most recently she opened up the Dudley Youth Basketball League to include kindergarten through 2nd grade children, and her children are nowhere near kindergarten through 2nd grade, and she just has been, at the gym all winter with that age group of children for 4 hours every Saturday morning for 9 weeks in a row. And my son was one of those kids, so I'm actually not a personal friend of Janet's, but I was really touched by being part of that program. Anyway, we would like to have a road race in her honor, really just to honor her and make her feel supported. And because I have a little bit of experience doing road races in this community, and I see how the community does come together for it, I think it would be a wonderful community event and just a great show of support for her at this time of need. We named it Janet's Crusaders because she was a Holy Cross Crusader basketball player. She was the first one at Holy Cross to score 1,000 points, woman, to score 1,000 points and get 1,000 rebounds. And
She's in their Hall of Fame as well.
yeah, she was inducted to the New England Basketball Hall of Fame in 2006. So she's just an amazing woman. And so our plan is to have a 5K road race, run and walk road race, if you'll approve it. starting and ending at Crawford Field on School Street on June 25th at 10 a.m. So we have our work cut out for us because we're inside of 6 weeks now. So as soon as we can get approval, if this will work out, we have our mailings ready to go to try to get some sponsors, and any money raised will, if we can raise any money in the short time beyond covering the cost of the race, just to put it on, would go to the Adam Bullen Memorial Foundation, which is a charity that supports families who are going through a battle with cancer or have survived the battle.
And families in the local area.
As well as to benefit Dudley Youth Basketball, the ongoing support of that program.
And those are Janet's wishes.
Yeah. So, like we said, the race would start and end there, and we would, if you allow us to use the Crawford Field, we would also ask to be able to use the facilities, the Dudley Little League concession stand facilities, so that we could offer a free cookout to the participants at the close of the race, and just kind of have it be a whole fun event day for her.
You know that although the town owns the field, we don't own the concession stand. So you'd have to coordinate with those folks.
If I may, I have approached the board of directors for Dudley Little League, and we have their blessing to use that facility as long as it's okay with the town first.
Have you guys laid out the course? Have you spoken to the police chief yet?
I have, yes.
Okay.
We do have his
Fire
support.
and EMS?
Medical.
I didn't speak to them directly, but I spoke to somebody that they know that's on the fire department, and we're gonna have EMS coverage there for that day.
And that's voluntary.
Yep. Do you need any barricades from the highway, to block roads, or?
I think when we spoke to the chief, or when Julie spoke to the chief, they talked about perhaps around Sawmill Road, which is where we're probably going to cycle through, where it intersects with Charlton Road. We're going to need some sort of assistance there for safety reasons.
As well as, I think, some cones along, so the route, if I can just, if you can close your eyes and envision, because I forgot my map. We would start at Crawford Field and come down Mill Street and take a right at Dippin and stay on the side of the road with the sidewalk up and over past here, so West Main Street. And then we would turn in at the gazebo where the water department is and come out through the beach. And then Janet Brooks actually lives right on Lakeview Ave. So we would decorate her house and maybe have a water stop outside of her house, run right past her house, turn right on Sawmill, and then shoot across to Pine Street and end there at the bottom of School Street.
And that's right about 3.1 miles.
Yeah.
Chief, would there be some kind of, that Sawmill and Charlton Road's kind of bad?
Yeah, we're
Have
gonna
a
have to
cruiser?
work out the details with it.
Okay.
We can do something.
Okay. Well, I certainly don't see a problem with it. The rest of the
Mr.
board.
Chairman,
Mr. Ruda.
I'll make a motion that the board approve Janet's Crusaders Run Walk 5K road race for Saturday, June 25th, 2016. It's listed here as Crawford Field, but obviously approval would encompass the entire route, with Mr. Balyakonis to work out the details with the appropriate department heads.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further questions or comments, ladies?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Perfect. Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much for your
Thank you.
support.
Let's go. Nicely done.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next up is on the agenda is Mary Summers, 12 Green Street, yard sale permit waiver.
See the person here, and ask that you take no action in view of that.
Table or just take no action?
I would say it be tabled.
According to this, the date's already went by.
Yeah, the individual was looking to run an ongoing yard sale, and that requires approval of the board.
Oh, like more than
Yeah.
outside the policy that
Yeah,
was created?
yeah, and your policy has they have to come in for a waiver. Maybe they've addressed it, I don't know.
D, Paul Joseph, Beaver Dam issues.
Yeah, can we go back to the yard sale for a second?
Yes, sir.
Is the only issue, and I know there was another person that wanted to run it on consecutive weekends, do we have any issues other than simply not letting people hold it on consecutive weekends?
I think people sometimes want to do an ongoing yard sale with no definite end date. And that is the challenge.
I mean, I've come under, not criticism for suggesting the thing in the first place, but, I mean, do we want to make it simpler?
The policy says 2 consecutive days. It doesn't make reference to weekends, it just says 2 days.
But it also limits how many though, right?
4 per year. And so,
If we do it so that the hours remain the same, we don't extend the hours, and just say that you can't do it 2 consecutive weekends, and what difference does it make if it's a weekend or if it's a Monday, Tuesday, if that's convenient during the summer or something? I'm just wondering that, do you want to keep it this way? You want to keep it this exact? Do you want to make some adjustments? How do you want to do it?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, I voted against it, so
Yep.
you guys want to modify it, you can do what you have to do, but I have no feeling either way.
Jonathan, you got any thoughts?
I'd have to put a little more thought into it.
Okay. That's just something to think about then, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, we can bring it up at a later date.
The next issue, the beaver issue, all I ask is that because it was brought to Dan's attention, Highway Superintendent, myself, in a conversation, that we ask the town administrator to work with, Dan, is it the Board of Health? Danny?
Board of Health and Conservation.
And Conservation, just to identify if there are any beaver dams that are creating any issues of safety or health, and if so, to give us a recommendation for what should be done or can be done. That's all.
Okay with that, Greg?
Yep.
No motion needed, just
No, I guess
information.
not. If it's okay with the board.
Jonathan?
Yep.
Next up, Fire and EMS. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Vote for town meeting warrant article recommendations. We want to do that tonight, Mr. Massey?
Or you can wait.
Mr. Massey's not present. You want to wait till before the meeting like we do?
Yeah, we should.
All right, we'll do it before the meeting next week?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock. Fire and EMS.
2 weeks from now, by the way.
2 weeks, I'm sorry. Did I say next week?
Could I
23rd.
suggest
23rd.
that we take a formal motion to table it until that time? That places it theoretically first on the agenda?
So move.
Motion to table and bring up first on the agenda at the next meeting.
So that's unanimous vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Fire Chief, Fire and EMS.
All right, I wanted to make the board aware of some radio issues we've been having for quite some time, and look for your guidance on taking further action. I haven't spoken with the town administrator, but I've been forwarding or CCing all the emails that I've had with the Verizon rep, the town Verizon rep through him. We've had some serious radio issues over the last year or two with a couple of the voting sites and the water tower. I mean, they're there right now working. I know it's not the real Verizon workers, but I got somebody there that probably doesn't know what they're doing trying to fix it because of the strike. But this has been going on long before the strike started. And we're forced to keep the phone lines because I don't have $148,000 to go to a microwave system that wouldn't work anyway because there's so many hills and valleys in this town, and there's no fiber throughout the whole town. So we're stuck with the phone lines. The problem is they keep coming out, they keep making adjustments to the lines, and then lo and behold, 3 days later, there's something wrong. Something's in fault. We had a major car accident last week out in the west end of Dudley on Southbridge Road that involved an entrapment. The Southbridge tool site was overmodulated, something with the phone lines. I'm not radio tech savvy, but this was explained to me. Basically, we had no radio communication. The police didn't either. They share that site with us. The only reason I know that is because I was there on scene. But luckily, the dispatch supervisor recognized it somehow and troubleshot it and shut off that voting site, and it went to the next closest one, and then we had radio communications. But I've repeatedly emailed the Verizon rep, And, you know, they come out, they look at it, they put their stuff on it, they do the same stuff, they move some stuff. Well, they worked on it over the weekend and made it worse. Our repeater went down, it's still down, we're on the backup radio system now. It just goes on and on and on, and nothing gets fixed, and again, becomes a life safety issue. So I'm looking to go further. I don't know if you, I don't want to look at spending money because I know there's no money to be spent, but I don't know if we can take this a step higher or what we can do to Verizon, because to be quite honest with you, it's like dealing with Charter Cable. It's horrible.
Mr.
Ruda. Chief, I can help out with that after the meeting. Just get me the information. Just because of my full-time job, I can get some assistance with that, I'm sure. I do want to bring to your attention, though, that the copper lines that you're talking about, we have, and make the board aware of it too. Verizon is no longer going to service those copper lines, period. They've already said they're not doing it. So that's probably half of the issue right there, because the radio technology now is so advanced that it's literally, I mean, it operates on digital, it's IP based, or it's T1, or it's microwave based. The copper lines are going away, so we're going to have to start thinking about getting a different connection, because we're not going to be able to get service no matter who you talk to anymore eventually.
Well, I think
and when I say eventually, I don't mean like 10 years from now we'll start thinking about it. 3 years from now, we're going to have problems.
Well, I think the only way to do it is probably fiber, because microwaves, I know, and I think all of you know, microwaves just not going to work in this town. You don't have enough flat surfaces or direct line of sight. I was told today by Verizon they were going to continue servicing the lines. I've heard the same things you've heard, but I mean, I don't know how they can't when it comes to radio communications and police, fire, and highway, and any type of public safety. I mean, I can see them. I don't know how they can just abandon it, because, I mean, there's probably a lot of towns that are stuck in the same situation that Dudley is.
See, with the copper lines, Verizon actually subs the lines out to AT&T statewide. AT&T wants nothing to do with them, although they're hired to sub it out. Just to give you an example, the National Alert Warning System went out statewide for 4 or 5 days. It took me 4 or 5 days working with undersecretaries for the administration to get service, just to get that back up and running. 3 or 4 days of 12 hours a day working on trying to get the issue resolved. So we need to start thinking about a fiber connection or something like that.
Right. Well, the other thing, well, that's above me. You guys have to decide that ultimately. But the other thing too is, I mean, I have my radio tech coming out from the company that I have my radios from, and you know, he's there all day, and I said, I'm not paying you because this hasn't worked right since the day you put it in. But it's not his fault. It's not totally his fault. It's the phone company's fault. But I'm not paying him for something that hasn't worked since day one, even though it's not his fault. I mean, so I'm just looking for some guidance to move this forward a little bit further. I'll give them a little bit more pressure, because really it's gotten to the point of being ridiculous. I mean, this was the first project I undertook when I became chief, and within 6 months we had the upgrade that everybody wanted with all the voting sites. It was supposed to greatly improve the radio communications, and it's no better, if not worse. And I know it doesn't have to be that way. It just needs to be set up appropriately and work appropriately, and it will work to its capability, but it's just not. And it's gotten to the point, we're talking 3 years now, 4 years. It just needs to be taken care of.
So if it's all right with the board, I'll work with the chief on that, and maybe try to get somebody to help him out tomorrow morning.
Yep, perfect.
All right, thank you.
It's a police system too, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. He can come. The police chief can come up and talk on it. But I know only because I was there that the police had issues with Southbridge. There's a couple sites that we share. We share the elementary school, and we share Southbridge Tool. And I believe those are the only two. All the other ones are our own separate sites.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think you're aware that we had some radio issues over time, and our radio guys were working on it. Greg Linsky just came in, and our radio service was working on that before. Well documented, I had some issues with Verizon before. I know I'm brought the board up to speed on that about a month or so ago. When they didn't show up for a weekend to troubleshoot it. We were working on over the fire department's radio at that time, so. I think right now, too, I believe they're still on strike, which I'm sure adds to the fun.
They are.
So, you know, that's probably one of the problems, too. While they were delayed before in their response, this makes it super delayed. So it is one of the things that we have to work on. But I think it's an issue, too, that hopefully through our regional dispatch stuff, we may be able to put down for some grants in the future, maybe to make some improvements. That's something we'll certainly look at. So, thank you very much.
I mean, the only way I see fixing it is fiber, and I'm not the radio guy. I got the radio guy sitting behind me because he just walked in. But like I said, we looked into fiber way back when, not fiber, microwave, and I've been told by multiple technical experts, if you want to say that microwave will not work in our town because of direct line of sight and things like that.
I don't know, is this on? Yeah, okay.
Just identify yourself, Greg.
Greg Linsky, the Communications Director for the Southwestern County Communications Center. I would concur with that. We did have Motorola recently, about a year ago, do a small-scale study on microwave, and it was determined that a very small portion of the existing sites could actually utilize microwave because of the terrain, microwave requiring line of sight to exist. There are some potential options to utilize sites in other surrounding towns and basically hop around in order to get to the existing sites. Adds a significant amount of infrastructure and cost. That being said, we did put in for some grant money. We've put in for it twice now with the hopes of being able to move as much as we can away from Verizon to microwave without success in getting that grant money. It is over $1 million to do about 5 sites. So it's a huge chunk of money. The fiber option is certainly an option. We're actually utilizing that right now between the dispatch center, this building, and the Dudley fire station, and it's been 100% reliable to this point. But again, it comes with a cost. It's almost $2,200 a month for those 3 sites. So.
Through the chair,
Good to see you again, Greg.
who
As well, Mr. Joseph.
who'd you apply to the grant through?
State 911.
State 911?
I believe the chief was going to look into some options as well.
How long ago was that?
Planning Council. It was the FY15 and FY16 development grants.
Any further questions? Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck, Greg. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Greg.
Oh, and I was just informed the tank's back online, but Southbridge Tool is still down.
Now, is that your departmental report?
The more you ask me, the longer it's going to take for you to get it.
Student rep not present tonight. Board member comments. Mr. Joseph. Mr. Fox.
Yes. Saturday is the Little League Parade. I believe it starts at 11:30, and I believe Chief, they meet here.
I believe so.
Yep. I think it's a wonderful parade. It's always great to see the kids and how happy they are, and I will be attending.
Mr. Ruda.
I'm all set, thank you.
I am also all set. Town administrator report, departmental communications.
Yes, with the last meeting on the 25th, when you did the license suspensions, to meet with the licensees on suspension dates. So remember, the Gaslight was in for 3 days. The 3 recommended days after meeting with the owner would be July 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And then Drafters Cafe had a 6-day suspension, not to be served concurrently. And the recommended dates after meeting with them would be the May 28th through June 2nd. So that's 6 days total. I did meet with them. In some instances, they wanted to drag this thing on for a long time. I didn't see any reason to do so. Either one will be appealing the decision of the board to accept the suspensions, and I would ask you to endorse those dates, if they meet your approval.
No can do.
Then I'll make a motion that we endorse the dates as recommended by the town administrator.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
01.
Got it. In your packet was the Dudley Charlton Regional School Assessment for fiscal 2017. This is the end of the line. So the recommended budget by the school committee is $7,259,813, an increase of $177,098. That's the amount that we have in the budget. So don't be scared by the big numbers. This is what we've planned for and what we budgeted for town meeting. So that number is a good number. And then the planning board has its hearing this Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. on the zoning bylaw amendments to be presented to town meeting, so that if anyone does wish to address or learn more about those zoning bylaw proposals, they should attend the planning board meeting on the 11th, and I will be there. There are a couple of articles of interest to me and to the town. And then lastly, that town planner vacancy is advertised, and we're expecting applications due in just before Memorial Day. So that's my report.
I'd just like to add to Greg's report that we placeholded the Tobin Farms article. The planning board was working with the developer and other parties. The chairman came in one night with at least one member of his board, I remember, and they were looking for waivers. They were going to grant waivers and this and that, and highway superintendent can probably speak further. It's my understanding that the planning board chair, at a minimum, is going to request they either pass over a negative recommendation.
Yeah, they indicate that the as-built plan does not exist, or has not been submitted.
So I'm not sure who the contact person is up there that we have. I mean, how
We
much further?
contacted the developer who was finishing the project, and have not heard back from him.
So the people that are in that development, I think they need to understand that there's still some outstanding issues. I mean, they worked with the planning board, got to a certain point. I don't know. I mean, I understand how it ends. The developer brings plans forward. I don't know if somebody did not see it through. I'm not assessing blame. But when the people show up at the meeting that night, they need to have all their facts. We're not having a public hearing at the town meeting. The time to have that questions answered would be at the May 11th meeting. I hope somebody at home is watching.
Thank you.
Executive session?
Executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining, negotiations, or strategy.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the board move into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, not to reconvene in open session.
Motion made, motion seconded, roll call vote.
John Ruda, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Peter Fox, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
We're out.